Spiritual Potato, take one. Hello, friends. You're listening to the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast with Liam and. This is where you say your name.
Oh, Chris.
And Chris. So, Chris. You haven't been called Chris for a long time, have you?
No.
When's the last time you had Chris chanted at you with a load of monks in front of you bowing? Oh, Chris.
Well, my name wasn't Chris that time.
No, I suppose not. Today's episode is a spiritual potato or psychic potato? Spiritual potato.
Spiritual potato.
But it may as well be psychic potato because we're talking about psychic numbness. How do you develop psychic ability? Why are all these people going on about us seeing spirits at the bottom of the bed at night time? Are they just attention seeking? Have they got a gift? Have they got a curse? What is up with this psychic stuff, Chris?
Wow. What's up with this psychic stuff, Chris? Okay.
Yeah.
So this name was chosen by one of our patrons, and to describe something she felt reflected herself. In the fact that she was always comparing herself to all these amazing stories all her friends had about, the like you say, seeing spookies at the end of the bed, or amazing experiences with deja vu, being really good at reading the tarot cards. And she says that often she struggles with picking up any energy at all. I think there's kind of two avenues we can talk about this. Obviously, not both of them apply to her, but the first avenue is obviously talking about what is the
orgasms.
No, different O.
No.
Is a different kind of. You've just completely thrown me now. What was I about to say?
I know I have. The screaming O, is that not how it is? Because from what I've looked upon in my work and coming across multiple psychics. Let me put this in a different way. Going to psychic fairs and that, speaking to psychics, meeting psychics, and they all talk about all the energy and all of this and that. Some of them, they make it sound like all of this energy is almost like an orgasm. It's just so overpowering. It makes you shudder and roll on your side and go to sleep immediately after feeling the energy. I'm thinking that is how it can often come across to people, and if they don't get that experience, then they feel like they're not a psychic. But at the same time, I think there are other people that actually, and this is not that many people, there are other people that maybe always say that actually it's always numb, that it's always kind of like, well, in other words, they never get their orgasms, Chris. Some of them don't get the orgasms. Sometimes it's just a slight change in the air they feel, like a very low level clairsentience. What's your experiences with the psychics you've come across?
Wow. Apologies, everyone. Liam's on one of those today. I think he's warming up for the Fausti show later today. Right. Yes. Amongst all that, you made a really good point. It was a small one, but I'll stretch it so it actually makes sense. Is this idea of kind of, everyone's got a couple of stories, and I think that's what it comes out of. Is that it feels like these days, like everybody's got a story about some kind of psychic event that happened, whether that's knowing mom was going to call before you picked up the phone, and I don't mean caller ID before you jump in, um, or those kind of knowing where something is that you shouldn't know, all those kind of little stories that everybody's kind of got, alongside with, like I said, ghosties at the end of the bed, all that kind of stuff. And when you're a practitioner that doesn't have those stories, they feel like something is lacking. And what that actually means is that they've probably had lots of experiences rather than the couple that stood out to those people. They happen more often, but they're less significant, and therefore have not really registered on their radar as something they should have remembered. Um, I know a lot of psychics, and I don't mean the ones that you go and find at fairs, but the kind of practitioner psychics, um, that
Clinical psychics.
practice
Because they're clinically insane, or because they...
have clinic hours.
Well, they are clinically insane, but they also run more like professionally, don't they?
Yeah, so you got those sorts of people that are a little bit more aware all of the time, and actually don't realise that that's not normal, and therefore take for granted that that level of access that they're used to having, um, is not what everybody else has got. So what most people are waiting for is these kind of like big, kind of miracle stories, these kind of big stories that make you kind of go, oh, okay, well, that was definitely psychic ability. Whereas I think most of us experience it on a more regular basis, on a more everyday basis, and just don't realise that that's what we're talking about. So the example I'd probably get best give is dream work. So I don't know about you, but I find most people that I come in contact with don't remember their dreams a lot of the time, or struggle holding on to them. Now it's pretty difficult to know you're having, a a prophecy if you can't remember the prophecy when you wake up. Um, and obviously the sorts of training that we give to people is to try and make sure that they can hold on to things for a little bit longer. And I don't mean kind of dream retention, but I mean more more direction, so you go in and come out with the goal of actually reaching that information. Um, and then also there's the kind of more day to day, everyday stuff, the kind of gut instinct, um, explanations that you can't find for the everyday occurrences where you just unbelievably lucky. Those sorts of things where people just go, oh no, I'm just a lucky person. And you're kind of like, well, no, I think you knew what was going to happen, and therefore you took the other street, love. Like, it's that kind of lower level stuff that actually, once pointed out to somebody, kind of goes, oh shit, maybe I do this all the time. I'm just so used to it that it actually doesn't register as anything special. Because what people are wanting for is the Harry Potter moments, aren't they? They're wanting the miraculous ghosty coming to, tell them about grandma, or a really immersive experience, which, don't get me wrong, a lot of us do get, but they're not the daily occurrences. But these kind of psychics that you meet on the circuit behave like they are. And I don't know if that's always entirely the truth of what actually happened, and is more a case of a retelling of a retelling that's kind of become a ghost story. I rambled a lot there, Liam, so pull out some golden nuggets.
Right, so there's a couple of things that we got to be aware of. So for one, there's the idea that these rambling crazes that see, sense, and feel all of these spirits around and the like aren't actually crazy. Well, they probably are crazy, but they do actually see, sense, and feel all of these things about. The other idea is that there are obviously people that don't. And the people that don't are often told that they can never develop the ability, which of course we know is not true. But someone that does and has been born with those abilities to see, sense, feel, touch, all of that sort of thing, very often they're the people the spiritual potatoes go to learn how to sense all these things. And do you go to a paraplegic who was born a paraplegic to learn how to walk?
Oh, sorry, was that a
Yeah.
question?
So if you've never had to try and work for it, what makes you think that you're going to be a good teacher for it? Because you're trying to teach something to someone that's only ever come naturally to you.
Exactly.
And if you're one of those people that have developed the ability yourself over time from practicing lots of different techniques and ways and all that sort of thing, then what makes you think that you've reached your limit as to how far you can go? Also. And then obviously talking about the crazies, how many people have you met that you think are deceitful liars that are trying to exploit people for a quick buck by telling them that, I think there's someone with John. Do you know a John? Is there a John? There's a John. In your family there is a John, and that John's passed away, but I want you to know he's still with you. There's those kind of people as well. So obviously when it comes to paranormal investigation, psychical research and that, testing psychics is useless, is pointless. Okay, if you want to prove to yourself or investigate psychic ability, there's only one really decent way of doing that, and that's to become psychic yourself. Because if someone else does it, you're always going to be wondering whether it's a trick. And there are many cleverer people like Darren, is it Darren Brown? Yeah, Darren Brown out there that
Yeah.
can do all sorts of psychological tricks and crazy ass stuff that will make you feel or think that something cool and supernatural is going on, and technically it's not. But if you're doing it yourself and you can control that ability yourself and you develop control, then at that point you'll realize that, okay, it is actually a thing. And at that point, obviously, you won't be in a situation whereby you need to think, I wonder if I can go away and learn that, because you will have already developed the ability. You'll be the one that does the psychic experiment. You'll be the one that does all the psychic work, and you'll be the one discovering it for the first time. So, in my view, a lot of what we would say, a lot of beginners that fall in the kind of spiritual potato and sometimes psychic potato, because they're slightly different. The spiritual potato people are the reductionist scientist types that say, well, there is nothing. I know there is nothing, and that's it, end of. Because that's, spiritual potato is that, no, you can't convince me. I read in the science textbook at school that everything can be explained. And whenever someone's come along that's told me different, it's been a religious nut that I disagree with. Whereas the psychic numbness, the psychic potato, is someone that, okay, I kind of get the gist that there might be other things. I'm actively looking to search for that, but I just can't see, sense and feel stuff. Weird stuff happens, yes, but I'm not able to read it. It's only when I see something physically happen that I can kind of get confirmation of things. And if you're trying to learn magic, particularly in witchcraft, then you need to develop those psychic eyes, and you need to develop something else, which is the psychic hands. You need to be able to manipulate the energy that you're seeing and sensing, because that's essentially how spells work. And if you can't manipulate energy, your spells aren't going to work. And if you can't see energy, then how do you know where that energy is going and what it's doing? You know, it's all multifaceted, I think.
No, definitely. I think, again, it comes down to this expectation, and people hold themselves up to what is essentially an imaginary standard. Um, it's kind of reinforced by, these kind of, sideshow kind of level performers. Um, and then alongside that is what they have their imagination that pushes them to, which is it reinforced by popular culture. So, Harry Potter and all the other kind of stuff, that kind of reinforces this idea that magic is miraculous. And don't get me wrong, it is. What witches are capable of doing is miraculous. It's forcing change, in a world that feels often unchangeable. So it is tangible in that sense. What they don't, what they don't have, and which is what they're wanting, is the kind of Hollywood special effects. And again, that's what kind of comes down again with the psychic stuff, is they feel like things should be somewhat more showy than it actually is in reality. And I think that puts a lot of people that have the potential to be really great off, um, from a method like this, because they just convince themselves then that they're either not psychic or not spiritual in any kind of way, and then they kind of start shutting themselves off. Now, the kind of impact that I kind of want to bring up with that is how that knock-on effect that has in their spell crafting, because I find a lot of these spiritual potato types are the ones that don't trust, like you say, the kind of scientific kind of minded folk, who don't trust that what they actually do on a regular basis, um, they struggle to believe that that is magic, and that what actually they're doing was going to happen anyway,
Well, it's
and
just
that they've
luck.
conditioned themselves.
The luck
Yeah,
spell they
it's just
cast
luck.
is just luck.
Yeah, and they had no part in it whatsoever. Um, and the problem often with that is because they've started to shut themselves off, which means when they do have these miraculous bits of work happening, they're not seeing them because they've kind of put their blinkers on, and they've narrowed their view, to only see either that is concrete proof, or that is has no possible other explanation. And if you're only looking at those two things, that is a really narrow view, and a high bar of expectation for you to meet, and no wonder you're feeling like a spiritual potato.
So, running with the Harry Potter thing that you've talked about, and working pop culture into this so people can kind of understand, we'll use Harry Potter as a basis and then explain why it's wrong. So within the Harry Potter, much like all of these TV movies and films, you've got this magical blood, isn't it? You're either a witch or you're not. So in Harry Potter, you're a witch wizard, so a magical person, because you've got specialist magical parents and some sort of magic blood or something. Or you're a muggle, and if you're a muggle, you can't do any magic, and you can't even see the magical world. If you're a witch wizard, you've got that blood, oh, well done, you're a magical practitioner, you can see, sense, and do all sorts of things. You might not be very, very good at magic, but you are technically magical. Then you have the idea of like this squib, isn't it? It's like the person that isn't
Yeah,
really that magical, but they can kind of get a taster of it. So within this system, if you're thinking about it, relating it to the real world, you have the magical practitioners that very often can do it all without putting any effort into it from day one, from birth. Then you've got your kind of squib equivalents, which is why I can kind of see a little bit. I'm a little bit intuitive. I'm a little bit of this, a little bit of that. If I focus, I can kind of do something, but not very big. I can't do a lot of stuff. That would kind of be like your squibs. And then you've got your muggle types, which is, I don't believe in anything. I can't see anything. I've never seen anything. I go about being a spiritual and psychic potato. And that doesn't work in the actual real world, because in the real world it's not about magical blood or anything. Yes, there are certain energetic profiles inherently within people that do mean that they're stronger with certain psychic gifts and abilities and the like. But all of these things can be nurtured, and all of these things can be done. You can take a psychic and spiritual potato and turn them into that witch or wizard. You can't do that in the Harry Potter films, can you? That's the difference.
No. No.
The problem is that if you are the psychic spiritual potato type in the real world, where do you start? What do you do? And can you find someone that's able to teach you? Or do you just tinker around doing the best you can? And potentially, if you don't get very far, eventually give up.
Yeah. And that's the thing. I think that's the danger of it. Because actually, to go one step further, I will make the statement that obviously psychic ability is available to everybody. It is, on a molecular level available to all humans, regardless of race or creed. So if you're not able to get there, you're either not trying hard enough, or you weren't born with particular pre-settings already open to you. The idea that somebody can't have, the fact is there is no such thing as a squib or a muggle, really, when it comes to psychic ability. There are those that will have to work a lot harder for it, because that connection is not there. Their brain chemistry is a little bit different. There are others that go on the opposite end of the spectrum, where it is all unlocked and is impossible to lock back down, which is obviously the ones that end up, electric shock therapy and the rest.
Going cuckoo.
Is because there is just no, they're so oversensitized by it all that actually they can't actually process in a normal way everything that they are seeing, hearing, and experiencing all the time. So yeah, I just kind of wanted to slip that in there. That kind of says, anyone that says that you have to be born with psychic ability or the gift, and I will kind of go off that on that tangent very briefly. The idea that this is a gift is one I often struggle with.
It's not a gift.
The main reason
it isn't, though, is it?
If you
is your ability to breathe a gift?
No.
It's just an inherent thing that's part of your physiology.
Yeah. The difference is whether or not you've conditioned yourself out, or your family or people around you have managed to condition some of it out, or society has managed to, squeeze this out of you to put it back in its box. It's a tricky one, but at the end of the day, the very simple fact is it is available to all. It just comes easier to some than it does others. So yes, like with people that were, naturally born with the skills to run fast, it still means they've got to put work in to keep up that standard, but there will be some natural ability. And I don't think we'll dwell on the kind of naturals versus, we've done that and many other before now, so I don't think we should dwell on that all too much.
Well, we should start with the potatoes then. Let's just talk about the potatoes.
Let's talk about potatoes.
Last week was all about the natural super witches. This week maybe we'll just do one for the potatoes. So with the magical, spiritual and psychic potato people, this is all for you. So what I think the £1,000,000 question is if I'm a psychic spiritual potato, where do I bloody start? And it's very simple. You need to start at the very beginning. That's it for this edition of the podcast. No, I'm joking. We'll give them a little something before it goes over to Patreon, right? Won't we? So, obviously, in order to know where to start, we need to currently know where you are. Because even if you're a potato, some potatoes are more potato-y than other potatoes. So, how much of a potato are you? Now, there's this little thing that we've kind of almost invented, or at least we pretend we invented, called scratch testing, Chris. So, what's the basic concept of that?
It's essentially, for lack of a better phrase, it's an aptitude test. So it is kind of testing you on what energies you are capable of feeling. So the reason we call it a scratch test is kind of like the medical process of checking if you've got nut allergies. It's kind of that kind of scratch test where you are exposed to different kinds of energy and expected to be able to tell us in what way you can do, how much you can know about it. So that can vary from one client to another. In the process in which we give, when you're face to face, it's a lot easier to hand a series of enchanted objects or objects that hold certain particular energies, and go, hold this. Tell me what you see. Tell me what you feel, what you can taste, etc. And obviously, their levels of being able to do that, it gives us a good benchmark to kind of figure out exactly where they're operating at. I must say, I can't think of a time, I don't know about you, Liam, I can't think of a time that I've scratch tested anybody where they've completely failed. There is always some level of sensitivity there,
Yeah.
even in the minute scale, where actually they're far more intuitive than they even realise themselves, is normally what occurs first and foremost, because they come out with answers that they couldn't possibly know. And when you give a backstory back to somebody that has just explored an object they know nothing about, and obviously it's us, so the objects are not going to have any kind of hint at what they should be. So it's not like we're going to hand someone a deck of cards, and say it's from a lucky deck from some millionaire that won at craps. Like, do you know what I mean? Like, we're not
I wouldn't
going to be
consider
as on the
myself a
nose.
winner if I got crabs, Chris.
Oh, God, I'm going to say it in front of you all. Liam needs to go and get laid, because the level of or the lack of any level of restraint over the last couple of weeks is really starting to get to me.
But if I did that, I might get crabs.
God.
Just shaving off all of the hair, would that stop you getting crabs, Chris? Because I feel like
No.
that's a teenage question. If you ever did PSHE at school, like sex education at school, that was always the sorts of questions that you would ask the teacher. Anyway, we've got a minute left, so what we're going to do is we're going to say goodbye for this edition of the No Holds Barred Witchcraft podcast. We're going to go into extra time, though, and we're going to talk a little bit about the first kind of things that the super potato-y potato people are able to sense. And we're going to kind of take you on a little journey as to our methods for actually going through the process with someone. But we're going to assume that our imaginary person, who we're going to call Mr. Potato Head, is the really, really, really psychically numb potato that really can't see, sense, or feel anything. So if you want to listen to this process, then you're going to have to get on the Thoth Witchcraft Patreon in order to listen. So go there now.